So it's another journalist behaving badly episode for you tonight. And this one's comedy gold. It's comedy gold. You can't make this up, folks. You can't make this up. And it's at the New Yorker, a story by Joe Lepore. Now, if you're not familiar with Joe Lepore, just to give you some context here. So Joe Lepore is mad that there's a possibility that Trump's not going to be convicted during these trials, all these charges that are being brought against Trump. So she's really mad about this. But the way she frames it is she's trying to equate Trump to Jefferson Davis, president of the Confederacy. I kid you not. Now, this article came out the 4th. It says here, what happened when the U.S. failed to prosecute an insurrectionist ex-president? Well, I believe the title answers itself. Jefferson Davis was the president of the Confederate States of America, a separate republic from the United States. So when all these states in the South seceded, became part of the CSA, they were no longer citizens of the United States, which means that Jefferson Davis could not be tried in the United States for treason because he was no longer a citizen of the United States. But somehow she doesn't get that. I'm thinking she knows that. And actually, in this interview I saw, she admits to this. But she's still trying to frame this argument that Trump is equivalent to Jefferson Davis. So here's the subheadline. After the Civil War, Jefferson Davis, the president of the Confederacy, was to be tried for treason. Does the debacle hold lessons for the trials awaiting Donald Trump? So here's how she starts out. Jefferson Davis, the half-blind ex-president of the Confederate States of America. So she just had to throw that in there to give it a little more oomph, you know? To turn the knife, so to speak. Jefferson Davis, the half-blind ex-president of the Confederate States of America, leaned on a cane as he hobbled into a federal courthouse in Richmond, Virginia, only days before a Chicago Tribune reporter who had met Davis on the boat ride to Richmond had written that his step is light and elastic. But in court facing trial for treason, Davis, 58, gave every appearance of being bent and broken. A reporter from Kentucky described him as a gaunt and feeble-looking man, wearing a soft black hat and sober black suit, as if he were a corpse. And that's the way you want it, right, Joe Lepore? That's the way you want it. It's just like these people who just melted down the statue of Robert E. Lee. They called it an execution. Now, you can have your disagreements about the Confederacy, about people like Robert E. Lee or Jefferson Davis. That's fine. I don't have a problem with that. But when you get to the point where you're melting down a statue and you're saying this is a mock execution, you need to go seek help. Getting back to the article, he'd spent 2 years in a military prison. He wanted to be released. A good many Americans wanted him dead. Quote, we'll hang Jeff Davis from a sour apple tree, they sang to the tune of John Brown's body. Well, John Brown was not a saint. If you've seen pictures of John Brown, he looks like he may have suffered from mental illness, had a chemical imbalance. I mean, seriously, he does. He looks like he suffered from some type of mental illness or chemical imbalance. That was uncommon back in the day, which might explain why he carried out the violent attacks that he did. So she talks about, there being black jurors during this trial. She goes on to say that Davis walked out a free man released on bail. Not too many months after the federal government's case against him fell apart, there's no real consensus about why. Well, isn't it obvious? It's in the title of your article here. It fell apart because Jefferson Davis, at the time, wasn't a citizen of the United States. He was the president of the Confederacy. And he was doing what was in the best interest of his republic that he was trying to protect. Whether you agree with it or not, that's what he was doing. What any leader would do to protect their nation or confederation, alliance, their interest. That's what he did. Commander-in-Chief of the Army of the Confederacy. And she explains that in the next sentence here. The explanation that Davis's lawyer, Charles O'Connor, like the best had to, who said was the best explanation for this, had to deal with Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, which of course talks about engaging in insurrection or rebellion against the same, the United States, or giving aid or comfort to the enemies thereof. Did Trump really engage in insurrection? Did he tell his supporters to go into the Capitol building and break windows and terrorize Congress or the halls of Congress? Didn't do any of that. And did you see Liz Cheney? She gave this interview, and she's talking about honesty. Remember, Liz Cheney was on the January 6th committee? And they edited out that clip of Trump saying, now let's march peacefully and patriotically and peacefully to the Capitol to make our voices heard. But somehow Trump was engaged in insurrection, even though he had just told his supporters to peacefully and patriotically march to the Capitol to make their voices heard. And the concern here was trying Davis for double jeopardy. So by trying him for treason, if he already been tried, that would be considered double jeopardy. But it's a different kind of jeopardy lately in the aftermath of the insurrection at the Capitol on January 6, 2021. So January 6 was equivalent to the Civil War, to the Confederacy. Trump is equivalent to Jefferson Davis. When the truth is, and I've said it many times before, January 6 was an incident where you had some goons who got out of hand and you didn't have enough security to handle it. That's what happened on January 6th. That's what happened. But nobody wants to admit to that. Because to admit to that would mean that there was a failure somewhere. So why wasn't there enough security to handle the crowd? We're talking about a town that constantly sees rallies and protests. But mysteriously on January 6th, you didn't have enough security to handle the crowd. But Trump is an insurrectionist. He's equivalent to Jefferson Davis. And we're afraid that he's not going to get convicted as an ex-president. You people are so full of it. Not my audience. I'm talking about these people in D.C., the establishment. You people are so full of it. And let's be honest, you people, you love going into these foreign conflicts and the establishment. You love it because it keeps American imperialism going, doesn't it? That's the American way. So can we talk tonight? Legal scholars, including leading conservatives, have argued that the clause disqualifies Donald Trump from running for president. Challenges calling for Trump's name to be blocked from ballots have been filed in 28 states. 11 cases have been dismissed by courts or voluntarily withdrawn, and the Supreme Court might have the final say. And now she really lays it on thick in the next paragraph here. The American presidency is draped in a red, white, and blue cloak of impunity. Trump is the first president to have been impeached twice and the first ex-president to have been criminally indicted. If he's convicted and sentenced, and unlikeliest of all, goes to prison, and that's what you want, Jill Lepore, you want him to go to prison. And if he did go to prison, that'd be the best media blitz ever. Free Trump, free Trump. And I didn't vote for Trump, but I would pay admission to see that one. He will be the first in those dishonors, too. He faces 4 criminal trials for a total of 91 felony charges. 91 felony charges. Even Jefferson Davis didn't have that many charges against him. 91? And of course, you know, some of that's with Stormy Daniels. As though nobody in Washington, D.C. has ever paid off a prostitute. Give me a break. Or paid other people off. Bill Clinton? The insurrection at the Capitol cost 7 lives. The Civil War cost 700,000. And yet Jefferson Davis was never held responsible for any of those deaths. Because, again, he was the leader of the Confederacy. He was the president of his republic. And he was doing what any president or leader of their republic, Confederation, alliance, nation, you name it, would do to protect their interests. Again, she doesn't get it. But if Davis had been tried and convicted, the cloak of presidential impunity would be flimsier. Leniency for Davis also bolstered the cause of white supremacy. So we're now talking about white supremacy. How exactly did this leniency bolster the cause of white supremacy? She doesn't give an example here. If you're going to put a claim out there like that, Jill Lepore, you've got to give an example here. First elected to the Senate from Mississippi in 1848, Davis believed in slavery, states' rights, and secession. 3 ideas on what? No, Jill Lepore. Those are 3 separate issues. Slavery is separate from states' rights, as states' rights is separate from secession. Now, you can argue whether or not they were arguing about whether or not that was a state right to own slaves. But slavery itself is a separate issue from states' rights, as states' rights is separate from secession. Every state had a right to secede, Davis insisted in his farewell address to the Senate in 1861, and Mississippi had every reason to, because the theory that all men are created equal, free and equal, had been made the basis of an attack upon her social institutions, meaning slavery. Well, it doesn't say institution here. It says institutions, social institutions. There was more than just slavery going on in the South. If you read the CSA Constitution, you'll understand that. If you read the CSA Constitution. I mean, things like making sure that the post office funds itself. Yeah, they were talking about that in the CSA. Weeks later, Davis became the president of the Confederacy. His vice president, Alexander Stephens, said that the cornerstone of the new government rests upon the great truth that the Negro is not equal to the white man. Trump could win his lost cause too. This is just the same talking points we've seen over and over again. This is all gobbledygook, and you're trying to connect what happened during 1860 or 1861 with what happened on January 6th. Well, it ain't going to fly because there's no connection here. And by the way, Jill Lepore, this comment that Vice President Alexander Stephens, who was a good friend of Abraham Lincoln, this comment, he said that the new government rests upon the great truth that the Negro is not equal to the white man. Well, Leland Stanford, governor of California, during his State of the State address in 1862, within a year of this cornerstone speech, called the Chinese an inferior race. What do you have to say about that, Jill Lepore? Absolutely nothing. You talk about ignorant of history. So I thought I'd share this with you, and this article goes on and on and on. Now, don't misunderstand me. I'm not a defender of slavery here. My issue with this article is they're trying to merge these issues together, January 6th with the Confederacy, with the Civil War, and to say that Trump is equivalent to Jefferson Davis, while she's complaining that we can't convict an ex-president. Well, too effing bad, baby. Why didn't you talk about somebody like Nixon? Or Bill Clinton? Or how about Al Gore in 2000, who questioned the election results of 2000? No, we can't talk about that. We can't talk about that because we've got to get rid of Trump. No matter what the cost, we've got to get rid of Trump. Whether we compare him to Jefferson Davis or we talk about January 6th and call it worse than the Civil War, darkest day since the Civil War. That's what we got to do. Because our side's got to win, because we've got to fix America. Give me a break. So I thought you'd enjoy this article. Pardon me. Take a sip of my coffee here. Getting long-winded. But as you know, I love doing these videos for you guys. So thank you for being a part of this thing called the Culture Confederacy, subscribing, whatever you're doing out there. And you can follow me at Instagram, #JasonComposes, because I write music in my spare time. Or go to X, Culture Confederacy, the Culture Confed 1 on X. This is the Culture Confederacy saying peace out. Stay safe, everybody. God bless this thing called the United States. I'll catch you next time, and you'll have a great Thursday night.